My nose has got to cut it out with this shit. Damn, bitch. I got rip in some of my underlayers of tights here, so it looks like I've got horrible burn scars. Ooh. That's how you find out I was Carrie. Carrie White, scary white, plug it up. Happy days again, everyone. My name is Daisy Maize, and welcome back to Booning and Baning, the series where I make a pros and cons list about something that doesn't matter. What do you think? You like that intro? You like that tagline? She's doing some branding now. She's figuring shit out now. I don't have very much figured out at all, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, I am just so absolutely exhausted. I just got back from rehearsing. So excited, but fuck am I tired. So tired. Hang on, let me wipe this bitch off real quick. So that was very thick. Okay, let's not throw shit down, shall we? The only thing I'm interested in is throwing it back, not down. Technical difficulties. Ugh. Crisis averted. So yeah, like I said, welcome back to Booning and Baning. You may notice that we are in a different locale now. What's up? I got a little studio set up downstairs in my workshop because, you know, people in my house sleep. And now that those people have returned from their trip, I now have to kind of consider that fact. So this is a little bit better for everybody involved. It's also better for me because I like this setup a little bit better, if I'm being quite honest with you. For now. We'll see if I really truly believe that later. And I'm going to talk about a different time period for today's topic, and that is the Roarin 20's, baby! Yeah, that's why we got this whole getup going on. I was gonna put on my little feather thing, but I really didn't like it. I gotta disassemble it and turn it into something else because it's not the vibe for me right now, to be honest. So yeah, the Roarin 20's, the 1920s, shortly after the turn of the century. And that was just before World War II, right? This was during the Depression? After the Depression? I don't fucking remember history. I was just watching Brittany Broski's video on war and art history, though, and that's very interesting. Everybody thinks that she's just funny. She's actually very smart and insightful, and that's also super fun. She's also very funny. So fuck her for having everything, and pretty. How dare she? How dare she? I did my makeup a little bit different today because I have a pageant coming up, and as part of that pageant, we had a workshop on makeup, and then the next one is going to be movement, and then the one after that is going to be wigs. There's a whole bunch of fun shit that we get to do, and I learned some really cool tips. The only thing I'm not crazy about is overdrawing my lips. I don't really like it, to be honest. So anyway, the 1920s. There's a lot to be said, and as you can tell from my cursory knowledge of the two most important wars in our history for the most part, at least American history, aside from the Revolution, but like, we don't, who really cares? We get it. We know what happened. Whatever. As you can tell, my knowledge of history is base at best. Base at best, baby. Ooh. So, the 1920s are going to be, we're going to be going off of mostly pop culture and movies and the books that I've read and the media I've consumed about it, because obviously my actual public education knowledge is not, like, top tier. It's not even really mid-tier. Whatever's below bottom tier, it's probably down there. Unplayable. Ugh, my allergies are in full swing. Love that. Nothing makes putting makeup all over your face easier and more exciting than a runny fucking nose. I'll have you know. Do you guys like this dress? I made it. I made this dress. This is actually pieces of the first dress that I ever wore in drag. So anyway, the 1920s, there's quite a bit to say there, and I'm going to say very little of it. So for the first boon, let's just go for aesthetics. The 1920s are really only still relevant as opposed to other decades in American history because of the aesthetics, the fashion, the style, the flappers, the Great Gatsby, all of that. That's really all that anybody thinks of when they think of the Roaring 20s. Nobody is thinking about the politics. I couldn't even tell you what war was happening a second ago. So obviously, it's really only due to its aesthetic charm that really kept it in the minds of modern people's consciousness and modern society's influences, you know? People are starting to bring back styles from there. We got the bob, obviously, my signature cut as far as I am concerned, and anybody who disagrees can eat shit. And the aesthetics overall, I mean, they've aged kind of well for a reason. Like, the 20s introduced some really impressive and exciting styles. Aside from just the short hair for women and the fact that they were showing a lot more leg, the fringe, the feathers and accessories, the pearls, the gloves, everything was giving in the 20s, you know? There's a reason so many vintage influencers tend to set their aesthetics in the 20s. Usually it's like the 40s, the 50s, or the 20s. Sometimes the 30s kind of exist in there, but yeah, we don't really see them that much. Or they go all the way back to Edwardian, Victorian, etc. But yeah, the 20s are just kind of timeless, ironically. That whole aesthetic, it features in so many different musicals. I just did a number from The Wild Party, Andrew Lippa's version, Idina Menzel's The Life of the Party from The Wild Party in this very look, which is set in the 20s. Both this look and The Wild Party. I mean, hell, when Andrew Lippa's The Wild Party was debuting, LaChusa's The Wild Party was also debuting. They were running at the same time because that specific piece of media, source-fed from the 20s, was just that exciting for a lot of people. Now you have the bane of that, the First Bane, and that is that it's a little played out, baby. It's a little played out. I mean, the example that I would give, there have been countless examples of the 1920s in media, from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them to The Great Gatsby to absolutely anything else that has to do with the 20s. It's just so many. The one that I would always point out, for some reason it sticks with me, is Avatar: The Legend of Korra. And I love Avatar: The Legend of Korra, and I love the 20s. But that's kind of where I noticed that the 20s had started to lose their charm for me a little bit. Because when it was placed into the Avatar universe, I was like, okay, this is a bit much. I don't really need to see the 1920s influence everywhere, you know? It can just be some places. I don't need it everywhere. Why is it that whenever I get in drag, I think it's Elixir told me, my friend Elixir told me that it's the makeup powder that usually does it. Gets in there and makes everything fucking awful. Love that. So yeah, the 1920s as an aesthetic, as a setting, as a place for people to explore styles and history, it's just a little overdone at this point. There's so much content on it, there's so much content in it, and I think it's just time for us to collectively start fixating on some other decades, okay? And maybe let's go back, because vintage styles, not vintage values, and anything more recent than like the 20s, to be honest, in my opinion, tends to get a little problematic because it's just recent enough for most of the issues to not be resolved yet. But as I am obviously not one to dwell on the negatives, that's just not me, you know? Let's move on to boon number 2. Boon number 2 is the cultural significance of the 20s. Yes, I mentioned aesthetics, and that kind of plays into the same thing, but specifically the cultural significance. Feminism was really starting to get its roots here. That's a very oversimplification. Like, obviously, the women's suffrage was getting us the right to vote a lot earlier, but like, well, not a lot earlier, but earlier. But the 20s is when it started to have more of an immediate societal impact, you know what I mean? Women's suffrage and the right to vote was obviously one thing, and that started things rolling. But the 20s is when you started to see everyday people starting to embrace a more liberated sense of femininity. You started to see, you know, more ankles and legs. It started to be less of a crazy thing. You started to see shorter haircuts. You started to see less traditionally feminine values being upheld as the gold standard. You started to see a lot more women getting to be something else. Something more than just the women. So that's pretty fucking cool. Now the second bane is that it was really mostly face value, unfortunately. We still had a long way to go for women's rights to get to where they are today, and there were still quite a few hurdles. And let's not forget that women's suffrage especially, but also the 20s societal impact as a result, was mostly for upper-class white women, okay? Women of color were actively encouraged not to be a part of women's suffrage, because women's suffrage was like, hey, we still need to dress feminine, and we still need to be like rich and white, so that the men will take us a little bit more seriously. It's unfortunate, and I don't necessarily blame women's suffrage for that, because I know who their target demographic was, and the men that they wanted to get to listen to them were not going to listen if they brought too many radical ideas right out the gate, you know? Is it still problematic and shitty? Yeah, obviously. It's only been like a century or two since slavery was a thing, so, you know, it would have been great if we had moved a little quicker, a little more extremely, but I get why they didn't. It's fine. Also, I'm a cisgendered white guy. I can only give so much opinion on here without it sounding A, pandering, or B, insincere. So like, you know, take my opinion with a grain of salt. Like I said, I do little to no research for these things, so like, fuck it, right? Now for boon number 3, the penultimate boon, in my opinion. For that, we have, in my opinion, the fiction, the media, the content that comes out of the 1920s. I mentioned all of those movies and films, and then you have books, you have The Wild Party, you have The Great Gatsby, you have Legend of Korra, you have countless examples of the 1920s influencing generations upon generations to come. We still talk about it today more than most of the other decades. The thing with the other decades is that they were all very distinct in terms of political climate, in terms of fashion, in terms of values, in terms of literal wars. But there are a couple decades that people remember the most, and the 1920s is one of those. I would say it's probably 1920s, 1950s, 70s, 80s, and I think those are the ones up until today that really have the most distinct things. 90s and 2000s are close, and the 40s definitely, especially with Captain America being a whole thing, that's definitely re-entered the societal consciousness and our pop culture consumption a little more, but the 20s has been there kind of the longest, you know what I mean? And I will say we have some of our best storytelling set in the 20s. That's obviously just my personal opinion, etc. And then for me, the third Bane of the 1920s, I would say, is America. I'm gonna put that out there, America. Listen, the 1920s is kind of specifically an American obsession. I mean, obviously, everybody existed in the 1920s, but we seem to be the ones that cling to it the most. In the same way that we are the ones who have our country's flag on, you know, booty shorts at Walmart, slapped over our pickup truck beds. Like, obviously, America tends to drive things into the ground when we like something. We are that kid at lunch who has the same exact peanut butter and banana sandwich every single day, and everybody is fucking tired of it. Stop talking about your goddamn sandwich, Jeffrey. Nobody fucking cares. And you know what? Jessica's allergic to peanut butter. Did you think of that? Okay? And Beverly's allergic to bananas. Did you think of that, Jeffrey? No, of course you didn't, because you think only about yourself. You rat fuck. So yeah, I would say the main bane of the 1920s is that A, it's kind of America specific, at least in the context that I know it and the context that a lot of us remember immediately without research. And it's just kind of, you know, it's weird that that's the one that's stuck, you know? It's whatever. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. But that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. So, for our overall Boon or Bane rating for the 1920s, I gotta say, and this might throw a lot of people off, and I'm saying this as somebody who honestly likes the aesthetics and the stories that come out of the 1920s, it's a Bane. It's a Bane for me. The 1920s is the same in the sense of like the 1950s, the 1960s. It's like the aesthetics are kind of cool, but overall not a great time. Not a great time. I mean, look, this, for example, this would not fly there. It did fly there plenty of times, but there were also just as many people who got literally lynched for it. So, like, let's not romanticize eras that were not really good for many people anymore, okay? Maybe we just skip that. I think that would be the best bet. So yeah, Bane for me. It's a Bane for me, dog. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, feel free to like, share, subscribe, turn on that nifty little notification bell so that you get alerts every time I post some more, you know, plant-based content. Get it? Because my name is Plants. Get it? I'm so fucking smart. Oh my god. How do I handle this? How do I do this every day? It's so just, you know, whatever. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time with another episode of Booning and Baning with me, your hostess, Daisy Maize, your favorite plant-based cross-dressing clown woman. So yeah, see you next time. Wow. Alright, I'm gonna do the Charleston. Everybody shut up. Everybody back the fuck up, okay? I'm gonna move my stool. This is serious. This is serious. We're doing serious things here. Ready? This is hard with this fucking dress. Goddamn. Get off of my heel. Oh my god. I've already torn holes in this. I don't want to tear anymore. Man, being a woman in the 20s is very difficult. I don't know how y'all did it.